Really excited to talk about Paper Tiger tonight. Um,
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming out here on this busy, after a long day of teaching.
yeah,
I don't know if we should. I really just want to talk about how we know each other. I think we should give some backstory.
Sure.
That you are you head of department?
Head of the department, yeah.
Head of theology / philosophy at Archmere Academy, where I went to high school.
Right.
You were my favorite teacher.
I haven't aged a bit.
I want beside the beard, you look great. No, you were not there when I was there. But yeah, we connected through that Golfers Journal. How's the old Manor Avenue Golf Club? See, I just don't want to talk about me. I want to talk.
I know
I'm
you're
deflecting. I'm
stalling.
deflecting. Yeah.
It's great because last year our feature guest was you. So back to you. That was a fun day with a bunch of teenagers playing with foam balls, making the campus into a course. But what really brings us here is Paper Tiger.
Paper Tiger, man.
And it's got some years underneath its feet, some miles.
It does.
Tread. A beloved book. This is my first time reading it. I loved it.
Thank you.
A lot of things I want to talk about, but does it feel as if it's been 20 years since it's hit the shelves?
Sheesh. Has it been 20 years?
04?
Yeah, I mean, so when was I doing it? I guess, you think like when I got engaged, not to spoil the ending of the book for everybody, but.
Copyright 06. But
Okay.
You're probably writing it, what? 03, 04?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing the work, for. So, yeah, I mean, it's almost 20 years. That's pretty wild. And you know what's weird? It's weird for a couple reasons. One being that I still work on the same stuff in my golf swing and in my golf game that I did then. Wow. And you think I'd have figured some of that out by now. I still have some of the same issues. I still sort of play with a shut club face. Actually, over the years, I sort of corrected that, but then sort of became like an early extender, like I stand up and impact. So there are some fundamental things that were issues in Paper Tiger that are still issues for me, which is, so when you think about the time thing, that's kind of crazy.
But it's timely at the same time because of the index experiment going on.
I mean,
with the Broken Tea Society. It's encouraging that you're still struggling with the same stuff as many in the BTS Discord are.
I guess it's encouraging, or it's like, hey.
Or is it hopeless and we should just give up now?
Totally. You're going to do this in a year? Are you crazy? No, I mean, that was when we started talking about the index experiment. And folks, if you don't know about it, it's something the Golfers Journal is doing with all our members this year, is asking you to, set some goals for what you want to accomplish this year in golf. In terms of game improvement, or just something you want to accomplish. For me, I want to get back to scratch. I'd like to qualify for the Philly Mid-Am. I'd like to lose 20 pounds. So that's all, those are on my list. And so you put those things in your list, and we check in on how you're doing. And we're going to have a lot of stuff in Discord to, support one another and give people different resources to try and find, what they're trying to accomplish this year. So, I guess talking about Paper Tiger is a good way to kick it off.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely it is. And just that question, that you raised in the beginning, and you actually do it, is, people wonder, how good could I get?
Yeah.
So
how good could I get?
So what made, what was there a moment, or was it like a gradual genesis where you're like, I'm just gonna go all in on this?
Sheesh.
What gets you to that point?
Well, I mean, you have to, really thinking back to that point, I didn't write nonfiction yet, right? So I got into golf writing or whatever. I mean, I went to school, to a fiction writing program and wrote a novel that happened to be set at a golf course about caddies and, that. So suddenly I'm accidentally a golf writer. And, but I hadn't, it's weird to think that now, because all I do now is write nonfiction. Yeah. So there was this question of, all right, what's the next novel going to be? And I spent probably 3 years after Paper Tiger writing the first page of 100 failed novel, 100 awful novels. Oh my God, they were bad. Unfortunately, sometimes they went more than a page. And but it got to the point where like I need another book. I'd like to move out of. I was living at my parents'. They had a little sort of beach house, and I would live there in the off season, down the shore.
Yeah.
I was like, I gotta write another book. And so there, I think Ben Franklin has this quote of like, either do something worth writing about, write something that's worth experiencing, or experience something that's worth writing about, or whatever. Like the title is an homage to George Plimpton.
Right.
And so people think, George Plimpton must have been a big inspiration. And at that point in my life, I don't think I'd read any. I'd read Plimpton, but I'd not read The Bogeyman, or I don't think any of his books.
Okay. Because it comes from Paper Lion, right?
Yeah, it comes from Paper Lion, the book where he like tries to play with the Detroit Lions. But the title was my editor's choice.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. So when we sold the proposal, the book was called Qualified, and when we started doing the edits, one of the first things we decided to change was the title of the book, because my editor was like, "You didn't qualify for anything." So we're going to call it something else. How about Paper Tiger? And I was like, yeah, I actually like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the title comes from. But where the idea to do it comes from. So I'm going to do nonfiction, and I think, all right, what would if I could do, it got to the point where I just said, if I could go out and do anything, right? If I could go have any adventure, like what would I want to do? And it was always in the back of my head that I should have been a better golfer. I should be and should have been a better golfer than I was. That if I didn't play, I kind of like, football was probably my biggest sport in high school. And if I had given more attention to golf, and and if I had the stuff that all these other kids that grew up around me had, and not that like my parents, not that I wanted for anything. Mm-hmm. It's just that I didn't know like, oh, you should work with that coach, or I didn't know what the AJGA was, or any of that stuff. So it's like, all right, what if I had what they had? Like, could I even, what I mean? I could have been somebody. And there's always that question, right? Like, and I was turning 30, and it's like, well, let's figure it out before I get to a point where like I'm sitting where I am now, saying like I can't do anything about it. Though part of me still believes like, give me a year, I'll get on tour. I'll get on some tour, the Golfer's Journal tour. I don't remember like a specific moment where I said this is what I'm going to do for the next year, but it was probably for a long time I'd had this like question in my head of like, could I have been something in golf? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, why don't I make that the book? Mm-hmm. And pitched it, and what a happy surprise that it came back and they were into it. Yeah, and it was my first time doing a nonfiction book, so it was the first time pitching a nonfiction book, which I learned is like a completely different process than writing a novel, where like when you're doing a novel, you write the whole thing, mm-hmm. right? And and that's an incredible investment of time and effort and imagination. And if you get to page 400 and it doesn't work, like, that's tough. Whereas with a work of nonfiction, you can write a book proposal. So I liked that aspect of it. When I learned about that from my agent, he sent me a bunch of proposals, and he's like, this is what they look like. It's like 30 pages. You write a summary, you write an outline, you write, tell us what other books it's like, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I can do that in a couple weeks, and if it doesn't work out, like I haven't flushed, 3 years of my life down the tubes, and I'm still living, in the spare bedroom down the shore. So that's what we did. So we pitched it, and the next thing you know, I was like, oh my God, I'm actually going to do this.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I was wondering as I was reading it, and you kind of have some hints here and there, like what the endeavor, how the endeavor was shaped by the fact that it was also a writing endeavor,
Right.
which was
That
really
was
interesting to me.
hugely complicated
Mm-hmm.
for me, because you kind of go back and forth of it being, is this about, am I doing this as a writer, or am I doing it as a golfer? You know, and on some days when I'm hitting it well, and I see that glimmer of like, I'm as good today as I think I need to be. You know, like I know I'm gonna have to figure out how to score. I'm gonna have to figure out this, that, and the other. I'm gonna have to get comfortable at tournaments and all that. But I'm not gonna have to hit my driver any better than I am today. I'm not gonna have to hit my irons any better, and my putting is pretty good. You know, like where you just say, all right, I've got the pieces. This is crazy. I can do this. And so like on those days, I was a golfer. And then you'd go play in a tournament, and you know, get your ass kicked. And there's plenty of that in the book, because tournament golf is a different sport, you know, I learned, than golf. And on those days, I was like, okay, I'm a writer. And thank God I was.
Yeah,
right.
sure.
But where it became complicated is that, you know, as I talk about in the book, I don't know if I talk about it, but I point out that like at some point someone tells me like, if you're going to get better at golf, you need to get dumber. Meaning you just have to make it simpler, and you have to stop being distracted by all this other stuff and all this other garbage that's in your head. And you just have to keep it real simple. Green, you know, fairway, green, putt. Fairway, green, putt. And but a writer's sensibilities are tuned to be completely the opposite, to take in everything, to be distracted by every detail. If I've had any success as a writer, it's because I notice things maybe that someone else doesn't notice, or I'm hypersensitive to some things that maybe other people wouldn't be bothered by, right? And I'm not just saying me, like I'm special, like any creative person or anyone that's just paying close attention. So like that was working against me, right? So I think I probably set myself up to fail a little bit, in the sense that either the book was going to suck and I was going to be really good at golf, or the book was going to be good and I wasn't going to make it as a golfer. Not that they're diametrically opposed, but the mind, like I said, the mindset, getting into a tournament mindset is not, I think, the perspective that a writer walks around with every day.
Mm-hmm. When you're meeting people during the journey, during the pursuit, are they also not just people that you're meeting, but characters that you're meeting? Like, are you taking them in that way?
Yeah. Again, it being my first time doing like a long work of nonfiction, I was kind of figuring that out as I went, right? And it would be like after the fact, where I would take notes every day and sort of collect what happened, and what I saw and who I saw and that sort of stuff. But now when I approach projects, it's like that, right? Like, and I try to like arrange scenarios. Like when doing the America book, like I was trying to make sure that I was finding interesting people, that I was inviting interesting people to be part of it, that I was going to run into characters everywhere I went. Oftentimes by just inviting strangers to come play golf with me. In Paper Tiger, I probably wasn't. I just had to get lucky, because I wasn't sort of thinking that far ahead, because I didn't know how to write a book of nonfiction. I was just like, I'm just going to write everything that happens and see if it turns into something. Like it's like, how do you write a book? I don't know. You write stuff down, and when you're done, you edit it.
But there are some characters, like the range scenes in the beginning around here and Glen Mills. There's some just straight up characters. Maybe that's just golf is having old sea dogs around, and
that's the thing,
you're
right?
just happy to meet them.
You don't have to look far. And that's so that guide I decided to be. It was golf that I was interested in, and not something where the that would be inhabited by less interesting people. I mean, there were interesting people all over the place, and I've been golfing since I was pretty young, so those like types, the driving range type or the telling stories in the bar type, like those were all characters that were super familiar to me. So it didn't take too much to like sort of capture them, I guess. But yeah, I don't think I really knew who the characters in the story were going to be until I sat down to start writing it. Yeah, I which is that's so funny to think of now because it's completely different than how the last couple books have been. Or I know someone's going to be in the book, or I know the role that they're going to play in the story. I didn't in Paper Tiger. I was just, and I think that comes from like again this split between being a golfer and a writer. Like I was so focused. I wanted to get really good at golf. I thought this would take as long as like if the golf part of it worked, everything else would take care of itself. Was kind of my approach to it. Like that I could not half-ass the golf. I didn't want it to be a George Plimpton story where it's kind of a joke. You know, I'm like, I want to do this. Like if I get to the point where I don't ever have to write the book because something happens for me in golf, great. Like I was that invested in it. So I wasn't thinking about characters yet. Not until I sat down to write it.
Are you writing any of it during the year?
Just notes. Just notes.
Wow.
No, again, and not as let's see. I mean, really thorough notes around the tournaments because I thought, they'll definitely be a big part of the book. You know, the thing that was tricky with Paper Tiger and was actually a little scary was that like for months, like not a lot would happen. You know, like get up, hit balls, get up, go to the gym, get stretched, do the workout, hit balls, eat, play 18, come back, chip and putt till dark, and wash, rinse, repeat. The next same thing the next day, which is heaven, by the way. It is like I'm saying it as if it's awful. It was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
I loved it. But I'm doing this for months and months, and I'm like, dude, not a lot's happening. Like, like I'm like, okay, I've lost a lot of weight. I'm scoring better, but in terms of like actual like scenes, like I did have I had this understanding that I was going to have to write scenes where characters do things. I'm like, there's not that much interesting stuff going on. So thankfully, out of 500 and something days, there's going to be enough days to fill 300 pages. Like that once I sat down and realized, I'm like, oh, okay, like I don't even have to mention March.
Right.
If March was boring, I'm not going to write about March. Thank God. But as it was going on, I'd be in March and I'd be like, damn, this like nothing to this. It was like, and you end up sort of synthesizing and like the doc study probably shows up in the book a handful of times, but I went there like 30 times, and I didn't have to write about each one. I probably use a technique in Paper Tiger that nonfiction writers would call compression, where you take a lot of like, say if I went to doc study 30 times and then I compress those moments into say like 5 visits in the book, because who the hell wants to keep reading about I went back to Twin Eagles. I mean, that's not for a narrative, that doesn't work.
Right.
Like in the book in the Garden of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, there's like hundreds of interviews that are compressed into like a dozen, and so you're telling, and maybe it's there's that line between accuracy and truth and all that fun stuff that we kick around in nonfiction class. But in any event, so it was like once I'd done like 500 days of this stuff, it's like, oh, okay, wow, I have plenty of doc study material.
Right.
If I can write doc study's best hits, if you will, right? I can write my tournament best hits. I can write my practice range best hits, and that's gonna be plenty of story, which was a relief that I didn't have to just write about like another day in the grind.
So I heard it said about like Walden and Thoreau that Walden only became like Walden in Bright Lights for him like after, and for others that read it like through the process of the writing. The experience primally was great, but the writing really made it what it was for him. So what was the process of writing like, and what did it do to your impression of the whole experiment.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because as you're actually going through it, right? It's a day in your life, even if it's Q school, or if it's, these moments that once you get to filter them through your perspective, put them down on paper, give them description and timing and detail, they don't become more in a dishonest way. They don't become exaggerated. They just come into focus. You actually get to stop and look at them closely, and that's awesome. And so I think the process of writing it, I learned a few. It was a chance to be super grateful for the chance for getting to do this. Where I got to actually, I remember like laughing a little bit, like getting to enjoy like the stuff that I went through, because in the moment, like, making 13 on a golf hole in a tournament is not particularly funny. In that moment, you almost black out. Like you become like, it's an out of body experience. You're like not even, you're not there. But then to actually slow it down, capture it, describe it, give it some life, give it some breath. It's fun. You really, I'd say it was in the writing that I got. Thank God I did write a book about it, because that is the only way I would have really appreciated the opportunity that I was given. Otherwise you just kind of go through it and you're like, didn't make it. Oh shit. But if you take the time, or that I was given the chance to look at it closely and reflect upon it and turn into something else, that I didn't care that I didn't qualify. I was living that was a great life. It was a great life. And I only realized that through writing it. In the moment, it was just like, gotta get better. What about tomorrow? I mean, everything everything while I'm doing the stuff, everything's about tomorrow, right? The next hole, the next shot, it's all about, can I get better? Can my scores get lower? Is my handicap going down? Where am I going to be tomorrow? And then you actually sit down and write it, and you're living in particular moments, and that's cool.
Yeah,
that was probably the first time I really got to. There's some of those moments that like totally passed me by, and then getting to write about like Alison caddying for me and her like putting her makeup on while I'm like scrambling for par. I'm like, that's so crazy. Like that was really cool.
Yeah.
And but in the moment you're just like, all right, I got a par 3 coming up. So different.
You just told me right before you came on that you haven't read it since it's published, but do any of these moments have any of the moments stuck with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I don't have to read it. Like a lot of it, especially even just talking about it now. And it's not that I've never read any of my books after they've come out. I've done readings and stuff like that, or whatever, excerpts and blah, blah, blah. But to sit down and actually read it from the first page would be difficult, because, you're a writer, the impulse to change things and to be dissatisfied, or fear of finding a typo,
bad punctuation,
or like, I can't believe that sentence, the impulse to reach for the pen and change it is too strong. So it would be hard to read it, but I can still I can still tell you about like the suntan lotion like gooped in Doc Suddy's ear. I can tell you about the swing that I made, or I can recall the swing that I made right before they found out that I had this thing in the side of my face,
right?
Where I felt like I've unlocked my golf swing. Like I remember that moment so vividly.
Yeah.
I remember all the tournaments. I remember joking around with the guys. God, I remember playing with the guys at the bar. And that day, Damien, when we were playing, we were at a par 3, and told him the over under for him on the hole was 6, and he honestly looked at me and said, "I'll take the over." Like, dude, that's not how it works. Yeah, and so, gosh, it was funny. Like, I almost lost one of those friends. I think I described as Tubby one of the Irishmen, and he was pissed. And that was an introduction for me as well, like writing about real people. It's the first time doing that,
Yeah.
you know, and the cost of that, and the risks of that, and the care that you really need to take with if you're writing when you're writing about real people. That was a whole education for me as well. So, yeah.
It's interesting. So you're narrating your firsthand experience and your inner dialogue and fears and hopes and successes and all that, but you're also woven some sort of general golf commentary. So I was wondering if we could maybe revisit some of your thoughts back then and see where you are right now. I mean, you're on record as thinking Marion would be obsolete.
I did. Did I say that?
Pretty sure.
Damn it.
It was. I don't know. Do you use the word obsolete? I don't know, but you were nixing it off the list.
See.
And then we had the 2013 U.S. Open happen not too long after.
I know. No, there are definitely things like that in the book. Where outside of my experience, where I do. I guess there are those are I probably remember less, right? Because they're not like personal experiences. Right, like they're like, what was my POV at the time? Like, what was my angle? What were my perspectives? What were my opinions at that time?
Well, it was like a distance thing. It wasn't so much about Marion specifically, but you're concerned about bomb and gouge and distance and these young guys you're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, that was my first introduction to like real distance. Like was going like watching guys at Q school, watching guys who were on the mini tours. Like before then I'd only been around club golfers, so I didn't know what like bomb and gouge really was until you're seeing these people do crazy things to the golf ball, even in 2005. And so so there were definitely I think I did have some takes in the book.
There's some concern over like overly penal golf courses.
Well, that was from living in Florida.
Stakes game.
Yeah.
Why is that red stake have to be there? Stupid red color.
Stakes are stupid. Internal out of bounds is stupid. Well, you know what? All that a lot of that came from spending so much time living in Florida, playing Florida golf.
Yeah.
Like, and I stand by that. And I remember making this point in the book that like there's no golf shot less interesting than a drop. Or there's no golf stroke that's less interesting than a penalty stroke. To stand there with your ball 3 inches underwater, like what a drag. Like there's no amount of invention and creativity that can do anything about that.
Yeah.
Now like give me like against a root or between two trees or on the pine straw, like where it's going to require or in some crazy bunker situation, like where I can actually I'm probably still going to make double, but at least I can it's a lot more fun to try and figure my way out of this. And so I think I got tired of that, and because I grew up on a golf course, Rolling Green didn't have any water. It's got a couple of streams, but you didn't really lose. You lost balls there for, different reasons, but not for hitting in the water. So going to Florida and where there's water everywhere and not a drop to drink, and alligators and whatnot. I think I just got tired of that kind of golf.
Just to go back to a moment ago, you're talking about growing up and seeing basically really good club golf.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing like real legit contenders for the first time up front before your eyes and you're playing with them. I don't know. For me, maybe the most memorable section from the book, there's a couple, but like the kangaroo round is a really cool moment. But then there's this great like 6-page, I don't know if you call it a diatribe or like just a taxonomy of like good golf when you're like, think of the best golfer at your club and realize that he's not shit.
Yeah. The golf pyramid, right?
Yeah. So good.
Thank you. That is, and I'm glad you brought it up because when I do hear about the book, and we were talking about this before, like of so 5 books, this, it's sold okay. But so it doesn't have the most like readers, but it has the most passionate readers, like that people that read it multiple times or connect. 'Cause I think they just connect with it in a different way, because they obviously have to be golfers and or have to be chasers like I was, in the story. So I hear the most from people about the pyramid, right? When people, the relevance of the book's still coming up today. It comes up usually in discussion of like, oh, that part of the book, where I had a lot of like really good players, and some that I like looked up to would say like, thank you for writing that, because some said they actually would show it to people or send it to people or say, this is why I don't play pro golf, or this is why I'd never tried to get on the tour, because yes, I'm a +4 at the club, but that doesn't cut it. And so that was something I was seeing, I saw right off the bat, because, I start off my journey by going to Q school and watching other people and figuring out that like, these guys are +8s, or some stupid thing. Like I'm trying to get to scratch, because I think if I can get to scratch, I can play with the big boys, and the big boys are +8s, and none of them are making it, And so like that whole way of even trying to measure quality of golf, like I realized real quickly, and that's the line that gets quoted to me more than any others, it scratches shit.
Yeah.
So I learned that quickly, and indeed it is. Although I'd really love to get back there this summer as part of the index experiment. So my goal is to be shit again. I don't know what that makes us now.
What does that make me? I don't know. Thanks,
No, you're total shit. No, so learning that, and then also, but then finding out that like I'm meeting great players, but they're even levels within great players, like that, where it's the really good club pro or it's the really good unattached club pro, because some club pros are great, and they actually do the work of a club pro, and some just are there to play. There's a whole hierarchy in that world, and then and then at the very glistening top is what we consider, elite pro golfers, like the names that we know. And so it's funny, because right, you see the great player at your club or the great player in your section, and you think like they could be like that name, they could be a Cameron Young or whatever, and you don't realize all those other stops along the way, or those spots in the middle. Now, at the end of the day, if you figure out a way to get it in the hole 4 or 5 strokes more quickly, you get to jump over all those. Like you don't actually have to climb the ladder if you just if you figure out a way to get it in the hole quicker. But
and you do highlight it, toward the end of that section of the book. I think like the actual amount of strokes though isn't that great.
No, it's not.
Just like consistency and doing it day in, day out.
Yep.
Round in, round out.
Round in, round out. Avoiding the big number. Keeping it tidy. There's so many differences. When the game between, what I was seeing in my game, and then spending time around guys who were living on at that time the nationwide tour or the mini tours. They just played tidy golf. They didn't hit not every shot was great. It's something that's come up on the podcast before when we've spoken with John Sherman or done statistical analysis about strokes gained, etc. If you really dig in on the statistics of like professional tour golf, players don't make as many putts as you think. They don't hit as many greens as you think. You watch golf and you see who's on the lead. You see the
broadcast bias.
Yeah, you see the 5 hot players and you see what they're doing, and they're really they're shooting lights out.
Right.
But there's 120 players or 115 other players who might not be so, who are still really, really good, but would be doing something that you'd recognize would look a little more human to you. But the sneaky part is that when they're having a bad hole, they're finding a way to either they're turning that bad hole into a par, at worst a bogey, and I'm turning that bad hole into a double and a triple.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess we want to open it up here in a moment, but I have one more question, because I was doing some of the arithmetic. And so this book is almost 20 years old, and when you're writing,
are you gonna ask me about my weight?
I didn't want to put it in those terms, but you're turning 30 in the midst of the book. The book's almost 20 years old. I've heard of this thing called the Champions Tour. Is there a gray paper tiger? Not that you're gray, but is there a gray paper tiger in the wings? Round 2.
What would we call it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the term for an old tiger? I don't know.
I'll tell you what.
Is the push coming? People want to know.
The people want to know. No, I'm not going to try and go for the senior tour. I don't. Well, I'll never say never. No. And in fact, so like when I did a course called Scotland, I tried to get good at golf again. And sort of did a little bit of a mini paper tiger adventure there. Because I wanted my last round to try and, to be a qualifier for the Open.
That's right.
And you had to be scratched to even get in, I think the U.S. Open was like 2.4 or 1.7 or something. You had to be scratched to even sign up for a qualifier for the Open. So I had spent like a year getting back to scratch to get that to happen. So I had a little bit of a paper tiger adventure there of golf improvement.
Right.
So I've gotten to kind of live that adventure again. And I think every day, I'm still totally golf obsessed. I mean, you were here in my office and
we had some training tools earlier.
I've got training tools. I've got the downshift board over there, where I'm trying to work on my weight transfer. Jaron was working on it, showing us his left leg what's going on there?
We were saying he's got a post.
He's got a post. He's got a post. Jaron, come on. I've got my Golf Forever swing trainer over there. I mean, there's the room's just full of and most of it's actually moved down the basement now because we got a Peloton. I'm trying to get in shape. This is the index experiment has inspired me.
And you have a hole in the floor of your office, like a golf hole.
I have a golf hole in my office with a practice hole with a flag in it.
And all the balls are in the hole at present.
Damn right they are. I don't leave the room until I make them all. That's the rule. And it gets tougher when you're putting with 5, and you've got to put it right dead center, or it's not going to stay in. That hole's filling up. So I'm still obsessed. I still want to get better. Do I have any interest in really trying to go for Q school? Probably not. And I think is competitive. Every year I take a swing at the mid-AM and go and post a number. I'm still waiting to get banned. I did get a letter one year because I didn't finish within. This was a low point, right?
Okay.
This was a couple years ago. Let the record show. I turned it 1 over, and had kind of a sloppy back 9, and was probably 5 or 6 over, and then on the last hole blew 2 out of bounds, and I was like, whatever, So I went and posted my 85 or something, but I wasn't within 10 strokes of the course rating, so I got a letter from the USGA that I was on double secret probation.
On the wall around here?
I should have saved it.
Yeah.
I should have. I was probably too proud, and I buried it in shame. I shredded it.
They call it double secret probation?
Yeah, they do. You're on the list. You're on the list. You're on the wall in Short Hills, New Jersey. And so I keep playing the mid. I'm going to keep playing the mid-am until they ban me.
Okay. I like it.
So, but I think Philly mid-ams, I've got a shot at that. I've come close on that. I actually came close on the mid-am one year. So I still do this stuff.
Yeah.
I still I wonder if I do like it. I don't know. I don't know why I subject myself to it because I get nervous. I still get those nerves, but I guess I like that. There's something exciting about that feeling of being in the moment and being in when you have to count them all, and that is still fun, even though it's kind of torture. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, why did I do this to myself? Once I'm out there playing, and especially if you can just get it going for a couple holes where you're I'm in this. There's no better feeling than that. When you're playing competitive golf and you're I'm in it. Oh, shit, it only happens for me maybe once. It doesn't happen often enough. But it doesn't happen often enough for anybody. It just has to happen a little bit, right, to keep us interested.
Sure.
So, I mean, for me, it's so your goals change, right? It's not going to be the senior tour. It's going to be my club championship, which I find No offense to my fellow members, but I find that I have a shot. I find in that company that I belong. So yeah, all good. That's where I'm at. So I'm still chasing, still striving. And that's the thing. Like I'm still obsessed, and with getting better. Like I don't know. Like I can you go out and just like hit balls and like not keep score and wander and like feel that like I feel like something of a hypocrite because I think like in the Scotland book I kind of found some of those moments and I do believe in that. I do believe that there is that sort of golf does give us a chance to sometimes get in touch with like bigger things and whether it be nature or yourself or whatever, things that have nothing to do with score.
Right.
But I get there. My path to that.
Well, it is a game, right? And
that's the thing.
Yeah. And you want to play the game.
So I want to play it as good as I can.
Yeah, you want to play for all of those really good things you're mentioning, but at the same time, you want to play it well because it turns out it is more enjoyable when you're playing well.
Damn right it is.
Yeah.
Really is.
Yeah.
Man, I had a good I had like 3 weeks this summer where something clicked.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with, and I thought I should do Paper Tiger too. Like I was like, dude, let's do this. Like
engines were revving.
Oh, they were revving. I shot like a 68 at Waynesboro from like the back, and I'm like, this is it.
Yeah.
Like tell Alice, quit your job. We're going on the road. We're gonna get a Winnebago, and we're going out. We're going on tour. And it lasted for a couple weeks, and then that swing thought didn't work anymore, and I was back to slapping it around, and I was back up to not posting, like Jaron over there. No.
Do you still have the same fire for golf writing?
Yeah, more so, I think, because, a few reasons. A big thing has been the Golfer's Journal. For me, and I'm not saying this isn't a commercial. Jaron is now sneaking off to chase my dog out of the room, which is pretty funny. Little Duncan doggy. And now Duncan's barking at Jaron. Good job, Jaron. But I think if the Golfer's Journal hadn't come along, I don't know what I'd be doing as a golf writer, because what the Golfer's Journal has allowed me and you and a lot of other people to do is to basically write the stories that we really, really care about and that we really, really want to write. And it's also allowed us the time to write them the right way and to be like, and to write like a capital W writer and to do it properly and to have the stories treated wonderfully and given life and given art and then put in print. Like so as a golf writer, like I was like reborn when that's sentimental and overstated, but that's not the right word, but certainly reinvigorated.
Right.
When it was like, hey, we're going to, because at that point in golf media, like I wasn't going to write for Digest. I wasn't writing for Golf Magazine, everything. They were going to golf.com and I was kind of writing there. But, that was like 500 words every once in a while. And I was like, what's the point in this? Okay, I hope I'll keep doing books, but I'm going to have to do books about other subjects. And I was writing about other things. I was trying to break out of golf. And then it was like, oh, here comes this thing that is everything that I always wanted. I always wanted to be on a staff. I wanted to be on a masthead. And I wanted to be able to write like long, juicy stories about things I really cared about and really have the time and the opportunity to dig deep on stuff. And so I feel as good as ever.
Yeah.
Because I know that if I get like all I have to do, it's an awesome thing as a writer when you think like the pressure and the concern of like getting published and getting paid and getting all this, when you don't have to think about that and all you have to think about is like, I just have to come up with something that kicks ass. That's awesome. It's hard. It's probably the hardest part, really. The other stuff's actually easier. But it's like, okay, I can just focus on that. Just come up with a killer idea and I will have a place to print it, that will give it great art, that will give me the time and the opportunity and the resources to do it. So it's like I feel better than ever, as a golf writer, and Golfers Journal, and credit to Simon and Schuster as well, and Avid Reader Press, who now my editor is, Jofi Ferrari Adler's Golf Crazy. If you've read a golf book in the last 5 years, he probably edited it. He's like the golf guy. Me, Bamberger, Shipnook, like they're all Jofi books. And so similarly, like I feel like I'm in a really good place book wise, where if I come up with something that I love and I want to do and I'm really passionate about, provided Jofi can see a way to make it work in the marketplace, I'm going to have the chance to do it. And that's awesome and exciting. And I'll just say it here. And these are the first 57 people probably that I've told about it, aside from my wife and Travis. And I think people at the Golfers Channel know that I have a new book deal.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That we just finished up. Not the book, the deal. I wish the book's not even started.
Can you pull back the curtain a little bit?
I wish I could there, Mr. Chominski. But no, I was teasing was texting with someone about it, a friend. And they were trying, like, what is it, and where are you going? I said, well, this one's not about where I'm going. It's about where I'm staying. So there you go.
So I have to hold off on Tom Coyne in Japan, the tall ginger.
A course called Japan is not happening right now. A course called Australia on hold, all on hold. We're going to do something a little more one place, but
can't wait.
That's why I'm excited, because it was like, all right, dude, I've done 3 books in a row where I've just been running 4 books. Ireland's got 4, where it's been really like chasey, like I'm really running all the time, and I'm like, I'm at the point in my career, and I think just in my life as a writer, like I want to challenge myself to say, all right, if I'm not just grabbing these glimpses, if I can sit still for a while and really capture a story in one place, what's that like? And I think it's going to give me more. It's going to, like this conversation started, golfer or writer, This one I get to be all writer.
Okay.
And that I'm pretty excited about. A little scared. Mm-hmm. Not that there won't be any golf in it or something like that, but it's all going to be on like my playing is not going to be relevant.
Right.
It's going to be my what I'm able to do as a writer, and that's I don't know. It feels like the time for that. I feel like I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Can't wait.
But dude, it's taken us many years to get confident enough to say, like, where I think my knives are sharp enough to try it.
Knives are pretty sharp in Paper Tiger.
Yeah.
It's very writerly. I loved it.
Thank you.
Obviously, the Ireland, Scotland, and America books are awesome. Scotland sticks out especially to me. All great, but Scotland was a special one for my reading. But I've loved talking to you here, but I'm kind of feel like I'm being a little.
Well, this is a book club.
I'm being a little greedy, so we should probably open it up.
Oh my
Robbie,
gosh,
right?
yeah. So here's what we have to do. I'm gonna put on headphones so I can hear everybody, and let people jump in.
So yeah, if you guys would like to chat, there's a raise hand feature down the bottom. I saw Eric had his hand up. I'm going to get Eric up here first, and then...
I can hear you, Robbie.
Hey, what's up? I'm getting our friend Eric up here.
What's going on?
Tom, you should get some lemon tea going after this. I know you and Matt put together an interview beforehand. You've been talking for like 4 straight hours.
How about this? And that's where I lost my train of thought there for a second. I did like a blood sugar brain thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Well, Jaren's been here since 8:30 this morning, doing the lighting. Someone knocked on the door.
Jaren slept over in the spare
room.
Who
is this? Like Jaren's standing there like a grip with a giant stand, and so he's been here.
We do have,
but yeah, we've been talking for a while because we just did a really cool podcast with Matt.
Love it.
About one of his upcoming stories. So yeah,
we do.
It's been fun.
We do have our friend. We have our friend Eric up on the stage. Eric, you are ready to go.
What's up, Eric?
Thanks for carving out time to do this tonight. This is awesome.
Thanks so much for jumping on. This is cool.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I wanted to ask you a little bit about something I picked up, listening to Paper Tiger again, last couple of days, and tying it back to something you mentioned in the Scotland book too. You made a point about this feeling of being settled when you kind of find that spot as you say, okay, you know what? It's kind of like you found some peace in other aspects of your life, and that unsettled feeling and that settled feeling, I think I get where you're talking about that with golf, and I think I take a lot of that's kind of personal to me too. I'm wondering how you kind of applied that in writing too. Did you kind of find that moment of, okay, you know what, now I'm kind of in that mental place, and then just things kind of start to flow a little bit, and you kind of find that the narrative kind of takes shape? Just curious. I know you've been talking for 45 minutes, but I don't want to set you up for another 45-minute long form answer, but I'm curious what you're thinking about that.
I know I could go on for a bit, but I won't. It's a really good question, and it's actually kind of ties into what Matt and I were just sort of talking about, finding this new project that I'm taking on comes from like feeling like a little more settled as a writer, and feeling like I just need to observe and capture and get it down, and it's going to, and if I can do that, if I can look closely enough, it's going to work where I don't have to work so hard. It's a really hard thing, I think, it's been a hard thing. It's the hardest thing for me to learn as a writer, and something I have to continue to learn and remind myself of is, I guess one way of saying it is sort of like less is more, or subtlety is sort of everything, that to not try so damn hard, right? And I think when we don't try so hard in golf, we play better golf. When we don't try so damn hard on the page, things read with a better pace and flow, where I think like the stories that I've had the most fun, like when I sit down to write a story, I know if it's going to be the kind of story where I've done, where it's like, hey, I've done the work, I've done the research, I've done the interviews, I have all this stuff here, I have enough time, I haven't, I'm not like crushed for time, and I feel like peaceful about it, and I'm in a good place, and I write, and it's not easy like to get started, and the first couple of days always are brutal.
Sure.
But I'm like in a good place, versus going into a story where you're like, not sure what this one's going to be about, don't know, didn't do as much research as I would have liked to, didn't get to talk to as many people as I wanted to. We call that like where I'm going to have to basically do like what you call a write around. Paper Tiger is sort of a write around, because I was hired to write a book about going to Q school. And if you finish the book, you'll remember that part where they said I couldn't go to Q school. So that was a crazy conversation with my editor, calling him that day, saying like, hey, they rejected my application. So I'm not sure the book has an ending, and I just played golf like for a year. And he's like, well, and so like Google called me back in 10 minutes, go to Australia. I'm like, okay, let's just change the narrative a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in that spot, like that's like an unsettled place to be, right? When you're like, where the writing is really going to be work. I mean, the writing is always work because revision and stuff, it's a job, and I approach it that way. But like where you feel like, this is going to be heavy lifting, I don't do as much heavy lifting anymore because, I feel like, well, I have a little more confidence in myself. I've been doing it long enough where, I feel like I can generally find a rhythm more quickly than I could in the past. Like it would take forever. So I feel like I am a little more settled. And when you are settled, then you free yourself up to not be trying so hard. And when you're not trying so hard, cool things can happen.
Yeah.
Cool things can happen in the story, and the story can actually speak for itself. It's like, get the hell out of the way, like it's the thing about, like, as a writer, you come to it with all this like ego and this like, I'm the maestro, I'm the director, I'm in charge of all this. And then you realize, like, if I can just get over that and get away from that, like, it's going to be better. And it's a better experience for you as a writer, and it's a better experience for the reader. It's not to say you don't have style and make choices and do all that stuff, but that just sort of becomes more automatic. And I don't know. It's a long answer.
Super cool. Thank you.
TC, we have
Thanks, Eric.
We have a couple. Thank you, Eric. Yeah. I'm going to move you to the audience. We have a couple more. Anthony, I did want to mention, though, you and Matt were talking about the next, the sequel to Paper Tiger, and Paul, Slip, and Jimmy in the chat put down something that I'm glad I was muted, because I did burst out actually laughing, which is Graper Tiger. So that could be, if you got to start somewhere, then at least you have a title.
Thank you.
Here is our friend Anthony.
Hey, Tom.
What's up, Anthony? How you doing?
Doing great. So I'm going to tell you sort of a weird sort of coincidence here. In November, I got a chance to do a workshop down in Melbourne. I was reading your book, finished it, read the last chapter, absolutely loved it. And my last weekend in Melbourne, I took the train and coach to Anglesey, walked to the country club or the golf club, walked a few holes, talked to the locals, talked to the club pro, and saw quite a few kangaroos.
Wow.
So thanks for
that
the
is so
recommendation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The kangaroos are still there?
Oh, yeah. They're out there like crazy.
Oh,
I
good.
got there around lunchtime, so there weren't too many out. But because I was told, like, really the best time is like at dusk and dawn. But I saw about 8, 9 kangaroos just walking a couple of holes.
Wow. That's fantastic. Yeah, I guess we were there pretty late in the day, and they'd actually, and it was the later the day got, they by the end the greens were overrun. Like, you couldn't putt on them.
Well, they actually have a webcam that you can watch, and and I found by looking at the webcam, the best time of day is around dusk and dawn.
That's so
because they were just all over the course at that point in time.
Anglesey Golf Club, people, get down there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful course, beautiful town too.
Yeah, that was fun. Like, I didn't get to tell the rest of the story, obviously. But after we got engaged, then we kangaroo, and then the story ends. But since I didn't qualify, since I didn't make it to the next stage, to the final stage of Australasian QSOL, we were free for an extra week. So we toured that coastline, all down from Melbourne down to the 12 Apostles, which is this rock formation out in the water, and out to the Penguin Island. What the hell is it called? So we did that whole coast just for a week, just stopping in different beach towns, surf towns, and hanging out. It was pretty awesome, pretty cool. It would have been nice to qualify, but I think it all worked out as it was supposed to.
Well, I really liked your comment that what was great about your scorecard that day was not what your score was on the golf course, but how many kangaroos you saw on each hole.
We were keeping track. Alison was keeping track. We have that scorecard here somewhere. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Anthony, I'm going to bounce you to the audience. We have a couple more folks. We also have some questions that people wrote in, so we'll get to those afterwards. But let's chat with the live human beings. Mark K, I just invited you up. There you go.
What's up, Mark?
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
Doing well. Congrats on the deal, by the way.
Thanks. Exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of echoing Robbie's comments from the start, I found kind of all of your nonfiction really elicited, an emotional response. And I think that, for me, it's really just this, it's kind of cliche, but it's really just the honesty in it. And I was curious, what are some of the earliest memories, books that you read that kind of really moved you?
Good question. So I was a big reader from pretty early on. It was funny. I was thinking about this the other day, like, because now as you get to watch your kids like discover books and become readers, and my girls are, which is really cool. My 13-year-old is like so into anime and graphic novels and all that, and she's actually a really talented artist herself, so that's cool. And then my 9-year-old is reading all these. She's not doing Harry Potter. She's into this the Land of Stories. But anyway, it's to see them sort of go on their own reading journey has been really, really cool. Because I was a big reader. Just remember as a kid, reading, always having a book, always going to bed with a book, and that's grateful to my parents for giving me that. And I got held back. In nursery school. I was one of those kids who, like, I had a September birth date, so they could have pushed me ahead. And my parents always tell this story. Like, the teacher was like, Tommy, and I was Tommy until I was like 16. Tommy doesn't know his numbers. Tommy doesn't know his colors. Didn't know whatever, the things that I was supposed to know. I'd like to think that I knew colors. Give myself a little credit.
Colors are hard to miss.
Colors. Let's say I knew my colors. Tommy's got some problems, but no. But they were saying, hey, like, they were blaming my parents, and my parents said, what we do is we read to them every night, and I remember that. Like, my parents read to me every night. And and thankfully I turned out, I guess, and the reading thing worked itself out.
Did anything, Tom, stick with you? Because I mean, Mark, not to sort of hijack this question, but I distinctly remember reading the Golden Compass series. I forget what is it, His Dark Materials. And I think they made an Amazon show about it, right? That's kind of going on now. And like those, and I read a lot of fantasy and stuff, but it kind of hit me. Like, Harry Potter hit everyone, whatever, but like the relationship between the two main characters in that story and the way it ended. I mean, I guess I'm more of a sap than I thought, but like that struck me and still stays with me. And I read it when I was like 13. Is there anything, Tom, that like hit you that way?
Yeah, 100%. S.E. Hinton, The Outsiders.
Oh, big. I read that. Oh my God. I must have read that 10 times.
Yeah, I remember reading The Outsiders and being like, damn. Then the movie came out and I was like just totally into that. I was probably too young to be watching it, but loved that. So then I read all her books. That was Then, This Is Now, Tex, Rumblefish. So I was really into S.E. Hinton. And so to answer your question, Mark, if like a book that like books that set me on fire, were those books. And then, more closer to it, like, that was when I was a kid. Closer to adulthood, it would definitely be Raymond Carver, the short story writer. Sitting here next to Matt Chominski, who plays golf with one John Jordan, who is still teaching English at my alma mater.
He's doing development now.
Development. Okay, moved on to development. Shout out to Mr. Jordan, who in my senior year taught a story class and introduced us to Raymond Carver. And a lot of you probably familiar or have heard of him, or if you saw Birdman, that play was based on in the movies, one of his short stories, etc. Anyway, he was a short story writer in like the 70s and 80s who he was a minimalist, as they say, like very spare sentences, even like sort of a little bit like Hemingway, very almost monosyllabic, but incredibly precise. And so what Raymond Carver did for me was like made me realize, because you're in high school, right? And you're reading Shakespeare and you're reading Beck, whatever. You're reading stuff that feels like I could never write like that. And then someone gave me Raymond Carver, and I'm like, I can do that. I know what all these words mean. I've written sentences just like that, not realizing that actually writing with minimally it's actually harder. So it kind of tricks you into wanting to thinking you can do it. I think a lot of people ended up in MFA programs, because they read Raymond Carver and thought, "Ooh, I can write awesome short stories too," because he makes it look easy, but actually it's much harder to write with using less. So, but that was a writer that was hugely important. Tim O'Brien was sort of a Vietnam writer, and I think had a sort of similar style and a cadence that if there's still a book that I pick up and read just to get the rhythm for good sentences, it's I'll pick up a Tim O'Brien book. I just love the rhythms there. So those were important writers for sure.
I think the Raymond Carver point and what you were saying earlier, Tom, about sort of getting out of your own way and letting the story tell itself a little bit. One of the first things I learned coming here was this publication gives its readers credit and understands the type of people that read the Golfer's Journal. And so the hardest thing the biggest problem I have writing for us is not explaining too much, understanding that the people I'm writing for are smarter than me most of the time, or at least as smart as I am, it's hard.
100%.
It's hard to allow yourself to not explain things too much.
100%. That goes for the Golfer's Journal. And it really goes for and that's the lesson that I had to learn pretty, in writing books or writing anywhere, is to really give your audience more credit. Trust that your audience will get it. Don't explain, don't dumb things down, don't do so much exposition. That's a lesson you learn that you have to learn along the way, because it's as a writer, especially as a young writer, I would find myself writing something and then wanting to explain, writing a scene and then wanting to point at it, right? Capturing a moment and then wanting to explain it. Because look what I did. You want to wave a flag. You want to flash a light on it. You want to hit the spotlight and say, everyone, look at how smart I am. Look at how clever I am. And you have to realize the clever thing is keeping yourself in the background, staying out of it.
Yeah.
That's the hard thing to do. You think that'd be the easy thing. It's actually the hard thing. But yeah.
Our friend Trey, Gator Golfer, is up.
What's up, Trey?
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Good. How you doing, man?
Good. Well, I want to kind of put a spotlight on something that you did and something that I noticed in the book. And you talked about the write-around process. For one thing that really stood out to me in the book is this arc of the character that you created in yourself. So you started off, in Philly with all these friends around you, and you got launched into this process. And in the middle of the book, there were some lonely moments. And we think about the life of a pro tour golfer. For the most part, for those dudes, it's a pretty lonely life, bouncing around from hotels and hitting balls on the range with no one around, and just kind of stuck in that grind in the process. And that really stood out when you're at Christmas alone at the Applebee's or wherever it was. And then it kind of comes around at the end, where it's you and Alison. They're just having a good time on the golf course.
Yeah.
And so, I see this arc of a character that you created yourself. And then you just talked about, well, it was really a ride around and things had to change. So when you sat down to write the book, did you know that arc was going to happen, or did that develop as the ride around happened?
I'll tell you what, that's all. Thank you. That's all really well said and insightful. And in terms of all those things happening the way that they did, I think I mostly got pretty damn lucky because, I would go on. I didn't know how to do this until I did it. I didn't know in terms of writing a work of nonfiction. I didn't know the stuff that the story would need until I didn't have it, or I had to reorganize something to find it. So I think I got very lucky. Maybe my editor who bought the pitch understood that these things would happen, but that I needed a lot. I needed problems, right? Stories are about problems. I know that now, and I instinctively probably knew that at the time. But I chose to do something that was really hard, and probably impossible, and probably was never going to happen. So that it was going to be difficult, and I was going to have roadblocks, and I was going to have low points, and golf was going to become a villain, that I was going to have a nemesis. It was probably myself half the time in the story, but I was lucky that golf, that this venture gave me all those things without me having to sort of plan for them. Now, in the next books, like I sort of set out saying, who's the nemesis? Like that's the first question. Like, what's the problem? You know, I went into Paper Tiger thinking I'm going to live my dream. I'm going to be a golf pro, right? I wasn't necessarily thinking about, am I going to have enough crises to carry a narrative? Am I going to have enough problems to have enough story beats to make chapters, and that's going to become a story. So I was probably more conscious of that in planning the next trips, which is why like I walked Ireland. What idiot does that? Well, I knew I had to make it really hard. I played, so much golf in Scotland in such a short amount of time. I had to make it difficult. So, Paper Tiger, I didn't want it to be difficult. It just was, because of the nature of what I was trying to do and the nature of the game. Now, when I did sit down to write it, there was more struggle and more low points, certainly than I thought I would get, and probably way more than I even wanted to. I mean, I got sick, I got like depressed. I got the golf blues. I was blowing up in tournaments. I was actually golf gave me so many problems to write about that I actually had tons of material, and I had to look pretty hard to find the silver linings and find like the bright moments. Now looking back on it, it's like, how stupid is that? I was playing golf every day. The whole book is a bright moment, really.
I did forget about that,
and it probably is.
The lump. That was a bit of a
paroidectomy. 4 years later, got that sucker cut out of my face.
Really?
So if you ever look closely on our next Zoom call, Robbie, you'll see I have a pit under my left ear.
That's why. Yeah, that's why you have so much stuff in the golf, is to distract attention away from.
I know you didn't even notice that.
We have our friend Josh, who is one of the group that runs. I might call it my favorite golf course, Hooper Golf Course up in New Hampshire.
Hooper
drives the boat, Chief.
I try. Hey, it's been a blast tonight, Tom. Thank you very much for taking the time
Josh.
to do this.
Oh yeah.
So kind of a two-for here. One, I really in all of your books, but particularly this one, I definitely love and can relate to the vulnerability and kind of the self-doubt that you express at times in the books, and certainly as a golfer who has my own problems and challenges, so often I can say, oh yeah, I know exactly what he's feeling there. So I definitely appreciate that. But the question that I kind of had throughout the book is, if you were to go back and somehow turn into Tom Coyne in his 20s, and you had to do this all over again, how would you go about it? Would you change anything? And if so, what?
Yeah, I would change a couple things. Play more tournament golf. I knew I had to, and I was trying to play as much as I could. But I would probably have gone to, so I went to like the Gulf Coast in Florida. I probably would have gone to like the Palm Beach coast and tried to play more golf over there, just because like the guys trying to make it on the mini tours were like, more of them were over on that side. There's a pretty good contingent now, like around Clearwater, but that's not where I was. So I probably would have changed location, so I could have gotten into more games and gotten more pressure and gotten more comfortable in that setting, and gotten to be around more guys that were living that life, rather than meeting them for the first time at if I would have rolled into like the Canadian Q school and like known 3 people, that would have made a big difference, I think. I'm not saying I would have made it, but in terms of my comfort level, to just be like, okay, like, rather than that feeling of like I am now on a different planet, right? So I probably could have done more, and I think like halfway through it, I realized like I don't know if I'm in the right like geological location. But I was in a good place with Doc Suddy, and I was getting better, and I don't think that would have been made the difference. But it would have, that problem I had of sort of getting comfortable in my tournament skin, something that I still happens today. I think I could have done better with that by putting myself in some more regularly competitive situations, less golf, going out and working on getting my handicap down. Really, at the end of the day, who cares? Like get into more competition. I think that would have been good. And also, anything else I would have changed? I think now I'm healthier. At the time, I was in my 20s, and in the book, I definitely lose a lot of weight and get in shape and all that stuff. But I still would like, I'd still go out and tie one on every once in a while, and that wasn't the most productive. And then that could be a distraction from time to time. I mean, there's a I remember I go to the Q school and down in Florida, the Latin American, and we're out late, and a guy like almost passes out and the freaking ambulance came and the cops and the whole thing. I was like, oh my God. So I found myself in those situations from time to time, and probably I wouldn't be getting into those today. So that's good.
Tough spots.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, great. Thank you,
Josh.
We'll get out there again soon. Tom, if you have any voice left, we have like 4 or 5 questions that people wrote in earlier.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And I
forgot about the guy passing out. That was bad. Oh my God, I can still see his face. His head hit the deck so hard.
Passed out from drinking?
Yeah, I think. Did I tell that part? Did I tell that in the book? Like the dude, where he says, he's like, if my buddy qualifies, I'm going to divorce my wife and quit my job.
Oh, is this the English guy?
And caddy for him. Yeah, because I love golf more than I love my wife.
Yeah. You talk about that in the hotel.
Yeah. And then about an hour later, he fell coming out of the bar and hit his head so hard that we couldn't revive him.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't. Well, I can laugh now because the paramedics revived him. Actually, he was awake by the time they got there. But that was like that happening, and then going out into my second round of Q school. Not great. Like not how they coach it.
But listen, he was a character.
That's the thing. I'm like, keep talking, you crazy drunk British man, because this is awesome.
I got my recorder on.
No.
So we had
his identity was shielded.
Yeah. We had Bill McGrath, one of the gracious hosts that I had out in Kentucky. A couple different questions. He said, when you realized that you were not going to be admitted to PGA Tour Q school, how close were you to just ending it? And then a second one, which I'll save, it's a different topic. But did you think like this is it? Cut it?
I didn't really have a choice. I couldn't say this is it, but I did wonder if maybe that was the end of the story, like me not getting into Q school, and I was going to figure out how to write a book about. Like I played a lot of tournaments and had some adventures, and maybe that was going to be the story. But I remember getting the letter. In fact, because we sent this application, and I like letters of reference, and Doc Study wrote a letter, and there was all this stuff, and it was like in a big envelope, and they sent the whole thing back to me, with just like a very terse rejection, like you do not qualify. Like it was a form thing, and they like checked a box that said insufficient tournament results. So like that sucked. So I remember the sting of that. I remember getting that, and I remember where I called my editor from the parking lot at I went to the driving range. Because I'm like, I got to figure this out. I got to get get better.
Got to go to
find somewhere to play. I gotta. Yeah. So I was in the parking lot at a driving range talking to my editor, and he's like, you should go to Australia, man. I'm like, okay, I'm going. Let's do it. So that's how we got to Australia.
And then his second question, speaking of Australia, or not a question, but more of a statement, is that you realize that Alison is the true hero of the book, right?
There's no doubt about that.
Okay.
Of all the books, for sure. And in fact, I wanted to have her on. She rejected us though, didn't she, Matt? Yeah, she was not. I think people might doubt that she exists, but Matt and Jaron both saw her. Isn't that right? Jaron's nodding his head. She's actually doing a cleanse. So she's been drinking bone broth for 2 days and has 2 more days of that fun. So she's like, I'm just not feeling it, which I get. And I'm going to do this cleanse next again for the index experiment. Losing weight, feeling healthy, getting off sugar. This cleanse is supposed to do all that stuff for you. So I don't know. I don't know if anyone else in the project is going to do a cleanse, but this one, she's done it before. This one's going better than the others have. So
if you're trying to convince people that she exists, telling us that she's doing a 4-day bone broth cleanse and she can't come on is a bad way to do that. Just as an FYI.
No, how could you ever make that up? You know,
you're a fiction writer.
Like seriously, that's too elaborate.
That's fair.
Yeah.
A couple questions.
I'll tell you, bone broth is expensive. All right.
Yeah, you gotta
send it from California.
Get out there
in jars.
Get out there and kill some deer on your own. It's hunting season. 2 questions from Dirk. Dirk Kirchberg, our Europe vice captain. How different was the final manuscript from the first draft? Was the first one?
Ooh, wow! They're always much different, and for me, it's almost always the first 100 pages turning into 10. And I'm pretty sure that's what happened with Paper Tiger, where a nice long lead where I explain everything and take forever setting up. And what's really happening there is it's me as the writer finding the story. You know, the same thing happens in a feature. You know, what you need to do is you need to blow up the runway, as we say in writing workshop. And you know, Travis is good at this, and I've probably gotten better at it. And it's just, you know, taking that opening that takes forever for you to make your damn point and getting to the point. Start where the story starts. So I know that there was a lot chopped out of the opening of Paper Tiger, where I spent a ton of time setting the story up. I don't think the second half changed a whole lot, though.
Yeah,
that
makes sense. I went to a sort of a talk a couple of years, long time ago now, at BC, where I went to school, with Dennis Lehane, Boston-based fiction writer, and one of the key takeaways was start at the beginning, which sounds so simple, but like, don't start before the beginning. Start where the story starts.
Yeah, no, we all like to start before the beginning, but that's what we call warm up. That's stretching.
You gotta get your cardio in first.
We're not doing. Yeah, exactly.
So Dirk, maybe a similar question, but what are the phrase "kill your darlings"? Were there any darlings or episodes that you had to kill in order to tighten and make this better?
I'm sure. I mean, it's probably too long ago for me to recall the specific darlings. But no doubt, especially I've gotten better over time, where I don't have so many like indulgent passages that I know are going to get chopped, or I know that they're going to get chopped, so I just chop it myself right away. But at that point in my life, where, you know, I'm 30 years old, and not that was that long ago, Robbie. But creatively, you know, like hopefully I've grown as a writer. So there would definitely been a lot of darlings to cut. And what we mean by that, it's a weird expression. Or sometimes they call it "kill your babies," which is
even worse. Yep.
Even more awful. But when you just write a passage or a line that you just absolutely are in love with, but it doesn't fit, doesn't work, doesn't advance the narrative, doesn't belong. So I used to do that more than I probably do now. So I definitely would have had to do that a lot.
A couple more sort of more golf swing and game and index experiment related things, and then we'll finish with something more emotional. But Jason Zach asked, in the book you talk about playing golf versus playing golf swing. I think a lot of us are going through that with the index experiment. How did you stop playing golf swing? And looking back, would you change how you would approach that? Man. Did you ever stop playing golf swing?
No. Dude, I'm still playing golf swing. I mean, look at my office, dude. We've got the downshift boards right over there. Chominski's grinding on it right now. You know, it's like
Jaron slowly pans the camera.
I'm still watching Kawa swing and trying to figure that out. on Instagram.
We gotta get Kawamura on here.
No, I mean, yeah, I'm awful at that. There's a guy on Twitter, I swear, I figure out my golf swing every day because he's got a new tip, and I'm like, I have hip issues. I'm like an early extender. I stand up at impact, and you know what Twitter's, the algorithm knows your swing flaws. I swear, the algorithm, it does, because I start getting swing tips for early extending and like for posture, like for impact stuff. Like, what if I was a flipper? What if I came over the top? Like, I think Twitter would start sending me those lessons, and those swing tips. It, like, I don't know. I mean, obviously there's something in there. It's just like, oh, other people have the same issue and they liked it, blah, blah, blah. But I'm always tinkering and thinking about my swing. And I think the closest I came to just playing golf were like the moments in the Scotland book, when I'm like just out there on my own in the Highlands, just lost and tired and hungry and not thinking about golf swing at all,
Yeah.
And I'm really playing golf. And I think that's what that entire book is about, is just playing golf. But since then I've come back and I've gotten back on TrackMan and all that stuff.
Well,
so
I think it might be
I'm back to playing golf swing.
It might be as simple as what side of the Atlantic you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's easier to stop caring over there because you get wrapped up. There's a lot of other things that have your attention, and you're not over there trying to, you're not going to shoot. You're not going to like shoot your career around on some of these links or whatever, and you're over there for different reasons. So it's easier to get a little more lost in the golf, which is another reason to travel. If you're playing your home course or the same course every day, really the biggest motivation to go out there is to try and shoot lower than you did the day before, right?
Yeah, but then you learn your course and you don't know. It's the whole does your handicap travel adage, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Rob Geyer, in the book, this is similar topic. You work on fitness and your diet, which a lot of us can do sort of in our day-to-day life. But he asks, like, in your considered opinion, how much time do you think people need to be actually on the range or on the course to make a significant improvement? I guess that's it's all relative in the word significant, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was interesting. Like when I was in Paper Tiger, and again, it's not that long ago, but like golf fitness, you go online right now, there's like 1,000 programs and there's a lot of like golf specific physical training. And at the time, there were only a handful. And, I got with one and we did a lot of work. I probably spent as much time on my conditioning every day as I did on my swing. Maybe a little more. Well, I mean, if you put in putting and short game, I spent more time practicing golf, but a couple hours in the gym and, a couple hours on the range. So,
yeah.
How much time does it make? I guess it's different for everyone. I think that I don't think you should really measure it in. One thing I would take away from the whole thing is don't measure your effort in by a stopwatch. Like, was it quality practice? Did you actually like have something specific you were working on, and did you accomplish it?
Yeah.
Is there like, are you getting? Don't you? You're getting reps in because you're trying to like groove this specific like thing. You're trying to do a specific shot. You're trying to do something. So are you practicing with purpose? I guess is the idea.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we've talked and we will talk much more with instructors this coming year about that exact thing.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel good when I can only go to the range for half an hour, but I felt accomplished in those time.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you can still it's off season, right? So I'm getting time. That's why my office is full of this stuff. Like I have a hole to putt to, or I have the downshift board, or I have the Golf Forever stuff over there. Like I can do stuff. Even if it's half hour here or there, it's like more intense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like I'm intensely working on this one move in my swing, and that's better than just going slapping 5-irons for an hour. I know that much.
100%. Last question from Colton. Says your stories such as Tom talking about playing Ireland with his father, leaving his clubs with a young man after the hike in Ireland, trip to Pinehurst with some vets, or finding what was left of his father's first course on a naval base always leave me, Colton, quite emotional. Is there one story that will kind of always stick with you at the top of your list, Tom?
Ooh.
Yep. You're done after this, so.
No, but there is. And it's when I eagled the 9th hole at Rolling Green, which is in Paper Tiger.
God, that is, when I read that, I was lucky enough to go to your Course Called America opening at Rolling Green, and so I could picture it. And I was playing behind Neil from No Laying Up, who hits a long ball off the tee, and he was nowhere close to the green. I'm not super short, and I think I had like driver 3-wood 7-iron, and that was a big game you played that day.
The tees might have been. I was playing for the members' tees. I don't know. I guess I think I put them back for the outing. So
we don't have to talk about that. You did some bad things on that golf course.
I know. You guys, people are still complaining about it. Well, the course was playing firm and fast, but in any event, it was the only time I've ever hit the green, and then to make the putt, but to do it with my dad there, and the cool thing for him to walk around like that evening, and it's like a Wednesday night in the summertime, and there's just the usual hang-arounds in the grill, having dinner by themselves, and like dad going up and telling everyone, the Tom eagled the ninth, and that whole thing was that I'll never. That one will stick with me for sure.
That's awesome, man. Really special. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm speaking for the audience, but I appreciate your time and listening to you, and always good to chat. Matt, I don't know if you can hear me through Tom's ears. It'd be strange if you could, but thank you so much for the time. Jaron up in the booth and everybody in the audience.
Matt says, thank you. Jaron says, what's up? Did I tell you how polite Jaron is? He's up here without his shoes on.
They raise him right in Utah.
I'm like, you have the best manners. Jaron, you're welcome here anytime. I can't get my kids to take their shoes off.
Babysitting services.
So they need to learn from Jaron. No, this has been a lot of fun. It's been fun to have everyone over, and thanks. We had a great crowd. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, awesome. Well, everybody, take care.
Thanks for picking the book, everyone. I thank you so much. That's awesome.
Of course. Next book is just a little bit different. It's an autobiography by Dave Grohl, Foo Fighters and Nirvana, and a little bit more rock and roll.
Is he coming on?
Listen, we're gonna work on it.
Do it, man. Do it.
We're gonna work on it.